Jackie Brown. Jackie Brown is a Quentin Tarantino movie. It is a film version of another Elmore Leonard book. You know, we've talked about Elmore Leonard recently, and I think probably one of you know what? This is my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie. I'm a big Quentin Tarantino fan, but I think this is the movie that, for me, is his best achievement personally. And interestingly enough, I was doing a little bit of research here, and Elmore Leonard thought that not only was Tarantino's screenplay of this book the best adaptation of one of his novels, but he said it was the best screenplay that he'd ever read. And Elmore Leonard has written a lot of read a lot of screenplays.
And
So
had a lot of his novels adapted.
exactly. So tell us about Jackie Brown, TJ. Tell us what that movie is about and who the Type 8 character is.
So Jackie Brown is a movie about a woman named Jackie Brown, who is played by Pam Grier, the great veteran of blaxploitation movies in the 70s. And her character is a flight attendant on a small, grungy airline that flies between Los Angeles and Cabo San Lucas. And she is in a deal with Ordell Robbie, played by Samuel L. Jackson, who's a small-time arms dealer. He sells guns to criminals, and she helps launder his money by transporting it $50,000 at a time across the Mexican border as part of just her personal baggage. So something that happens early in the movie is one of Ordell's criminal subordinates gets captured by the cops and then released on bail, and Ordell kills him to stop him from ratting on him. But he has already given some information, which puts the law onto Jackie Brown's trail, and they catch her and they find some money and some drugs. And then they say, okay, you work for us now, and you're going to help us bust Ordell. And what she ends up doing is very cleverly turning the tables and organizing a sting of her own, and transporting a bunch of Ordell's money and snatching it for herself and fooling everybody involved.
Yeah, and I think so for again, great characters, amazing casting, revitalizing the careers of not only Pam Grier but Robert Forster, who plays Max Cherry, the bail bondsman, who's one of the central characters in the movie. And you know, so Tarantino repeats his gift for bringing, you know, kind of forgotten actors back into the limelight and really giving them a platform to show why they were famous in the first place, right? So it was really good there. And I think we start to see, so whereas Furiosa is almost a superhero, right? I mean, she's super tough. She overcomes, you know, huge physical challenges, all these sort of things, things that would have killed a real person, you know, mostly. Now we start to see a much more human character in Jackie Brown. And again, it's easy to think of eights in, you know, in a lot of popular movies as kind of invulnerable, right? You know, John Wayne, for example, never, you know, never seemed vulnerable in any way. Okay, always in control, always the toughest guy in the room, that sort of thing. But Jackie Brown is a character at risk, right? She's a character whose life is on the line pretty much throughout the movie, because if she screws up, Ordell's going to kill her, right? And she's
Exactly.
very aware of that. And she knows that she's got to do something about this, but she doesn't feel like she has what it takes to kind of kill him in cold blood, you know, sort of go out and, you know, set it up so that she's in a battle with him where she wins, right? She realizes that she's a more vulnerable character, but, and has to use her brains instead.
Well, she's also got limited options in life, and she's very realistic about that, which is a very eight thing to have this realism about the brutality of life. Now, in her case, she has a criminal record. So the only job she's able to get is with this small, grungy airline. And, you know, in one quote, she talks about how she makes $16,000 a year. With retirement benefits, it ain't worth a damn. And now she's been arrested. And if she gets convicted, she's going to lose her job, have to start all over again with what? You know, so she's very aware of like, I'm backed into a corner. If I'm going to get out of this, I've got a serious mountain to climb. All right, let's do it. So there's no sunny optimism. There's no denial of how difficult life is, and specifically how difficult her life is, as well as the fact that she's doing this as a woman and as a black woman. And the character isn't black in the novel.
Right.
That was a choice Tarantino made, which ups the stakes
Right.
because apart from all the difficulties she's got in life, there's also being black. And the fact that being black in the States means your opportunities are limited. There's
Yeah.
just more prejudice against you. There's more institutional racism that you've got to fight, much less being a black woman with a criminal record.
Right. One of the things I liked so much about this movie is that all of the characters are pretty smart, except for the Robert De Niro character, right? The convict. I mean, he's clearly not the brightest person in the room, but everybody else is smart, and Jackie Brown is the smartest of them. And even though she's a Type Eight character, it shows itself through her steely determination and willingness to proceed and move forward in a vulnerable situation, right? To take action. But she wins at the end because she uses her brains, not because I mean, I don't think she hits anybody or shoots anybody. There's no sort of physical violence in the movie from her. But it's all being smarter than everybody else, which is not, again, not what we expect from eights.
Yeah, a word that I use talking about Furiosa, which I think applies here too, shrewdness.
Mhm.
Eights are strategic.
Yeah.
They're able to envision like, what's the situation? What are the dangers? Get ready to deal with them because they're going to come up. And she does. So there isn't violence in this exchange, but early on, Ordell comes to visit her and she's got a gun pointed at his nuts, as she
Right.
says. Like
Right.
she does not have any delusions about how this guy can and will kill anybody who gets in his way, which we as the audience have seen he's already done.
Right. Right.
She isn't thinking like, well, I'll throw myself at his feet and beg for his mercy, or I will escape him. But more like, I'll confront him and I'll let him know that I'm willing to get violent if I need to be. She doesn't have to. She never pulls the trigger on that gun.
Mhm.
But she makes it very clear to him as much as she does to the audience of like, I'll get violent if I need to.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's not that she fears violence, but she understands that she is in a vulnerable position. She's outgunned when it comes to violence, right? Samuel L. Jackson, who is very much an eight-ish character, he's the one that is physically imposing and dangerous, whereas she's,
Right.
overmatched in that sense. Thoughts on subtype, Jackie Brown?
Uh, Probably navigating based on everything that we've said.
Yeah.
Just very aware of like who's who and where do I fit in
Yeah.
and what's the strategic way rather than the more like we were saying the transmitting way of like let's overpower this person.
Right.
Because quite honestly, who's going to try and overpower Samuel L. Jackson?
Right.
That's not a winning strategy.
Right.
But it probably takes a navigating eight to recognize that. A transmitting eight would probably think like I will.
Right.
Nobody's stronger and more powerful than me. I will go up against this unstoppable force because I'm an unstoppable force.
Yeah.
Whereas she's more the chess player, which is much more navigating.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. I think it's, and we talked about this before, but it's a case of the navigator kind of outthinking the transmitter, right? The more imposing sort of transmitter. And now, again, that doesn't always happen. There are plenty of times when the transmitter wins in a battle like this, but it does seem to be kind of a common movie theme of someone outsmarting the more physically imposing person that we see very often. And I would agree with you. And it's a neat trick to pull off because, I mean, we're talking about Foxy Brown and coffee here, right? Pam Grier, we talked about this with Furiosa, even though that, they're both very beautiful women, there's not really sexuality as a factor in it. And it's kind of the same here, right? There's definitely a spark between her and Max Cherry, and I think more from him to her, right? Which is understandable. Again, we're talking Pam Grier, and she is certainly aware of her attractiveness, right? You can tell she's conscious. There's a little bit of seduction going on here from her, right? When she's playing the Delphonics and that sort of thing, she knows what she's doing, right? But it's not overt, right? It's nuanced and strategic and subtle and, not flashy or anything, again, which is common for navigators more so than transmitters.
Yeah, and she doesn't play the coquette. She
Yes.
doesn't try and triumph by seducing somebody
Right.
or by being sexy or by being beautiful or even using that to distract somebody.
Right.
It's
Right.
part of who she is. They do kiss towards the end,
Right.
but this isn't a romance.
Right. Yes, and it's left, and it's there is the kiss, and but it's never talked about, right? It's never, hey, can we make this work sort of thing, or any awkwardness. It's just him knowing, yeah, you know what, I'm probably in love with her, but this ain't gonna work out, and so I'm gonna go about my way, and she's gonna go about her way. Very mature.
Exactly.
I mean, again, this falls into one of those categories of really, really good thoughtful adult entertainment. Again, I just think this is one of this is just a spectacular, unappreciated movie that if people have not seen it, because it made money, but it wasn't hugely popular. But I really think people should see Jackie Brown if they like good stories and good movies.
It's also worth rewatching. It's
Yes.
just a good group of characters to spend time with. All of the performances are excellent.
Yeah.
Everything about it's good. So I saw this back when it came out and thought it was perfectly fine. Didn't really stand out in my memory. So it was a joy to watch it again and just feast on how good it really is.
Yeah, yeah, and a fantastic nine portrayal by Robert Forster, right? So the Robert Forster character is it plays the bail bondsman, and again, it it shows that the stereotype of the kind of passive, ineffectual nine is just not true, right? Because he is a nine, but he's a pretty assertive, confident, capable person. But there's that holding back, at the right moments that sort of betrays the nineness in him.
Well, he also works in a really tough job.
Yes.
So at one point, it's revealed that after his meetup with Jackie Brown, like, I don't know if it's fair to say that it's a date, but kind of,
Mm.
that he's going off to call her a criminal.
Right. Right.
Like that's just what he does.
Right.
And to him, it's normal. He does it in a very
Right.
nine-ish way. Like it's just
Right.
like, well, this is my job. This is what I do. Yeah, sometimes I get a gun pointed at me.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have to go into a really dangerous neighborhood and catch somebody who doesn't want to be caught.
Yeah.
Okay.